hard to understand. I know a lot of people had a lot of questions. So I'm going to show you today how I make it. I've been making it ever since I saw that, but I had to look up a whole bunch of stuff and call people and try to figure out what was really going on. So anyway, I'm going to try to explain it a little bit easier. So we are going to start with the sourdough starter, and basically that's just flour and spring water, but you can get a starter from somebody or you can make it yourself. You just have to look online. You just basically let it sit and it ferments and you feed it. So if you want to have bread every few days, you can leave it on your counter. I leave this on my counter with a wet washcloth on it. But if you want to make it not that often, if you use it, then you want to put a lid, like a metal lid, on it and put it in the fridge if you're not going to use it that often. Okay, so I'm going to start by, what you do to feed it is you put in 2 parts flour and 1 part spring water. So you have to use the spring water, like I said, but you'd use like 2 parts and maybe a little bit less. So some people put in a whole cup of flour and then a half a cup of spring water, but if you put too much in, it will bubble up over the top. So I just usually do a half a cup of flour and a 1/4 a cup of water to get mine going. So you don't put quite as much flour in as a full, if you're doing a whole cup, you do maybe a little bit less. So I'm doing a half a cup, so I just did a little bit less than a half a cup. And then you do a full, so half of whatever you put in that much water. So I did a half a cup of flour and I'm doing a 1/4 a cup of spring water. So you just put it in there, and then I've got this really long handled spoon that works awesome, and you just stir it up. So you'll notice kind of how it looked before, and when it bubbles up and rises, we'll start again, and then we'll show you kind of what it looks like, and then we'll start the bread. So you just mix it up. It's my own bread, so I can put my finger on it. And put the washcloth back on, and I just leave it sit over on the counter, and it's gonna bubble up and get bigger, and then that's how you know that it's fermenting and all that stuff like it's supposed to. All right, so you can see in here how it's kind of bubbled up and gotten a lot bigger. It's almost doubled in size, so you can tell that it's working. Okay, so now I'm gonna mix up the dough, and then I'm gonna let it sit overnight. So it's 3 cups of flour. So 1, 2, 3, and then 1.5 cups of spring water. And I did say you have to use spring water, but you absolutely have to use spring water. You cannot use tap water or it won't work. So 1.5 cups of spring water. And 1 3/4 teaspoons of salt. This says kosher salt, but I just use regular salt. I can get it to come out. Okay. You can tell it's not really floury anymore, it's pretty sticky. So just rest off. Anyway, and then I'm gonna leave it just like this, sit overnight. I'm gonna put a wet towel over the top of it, and then I'm just gonna let it sit for at least 8 hours, and then we'll bake it. Hi, okay, so now I have my dough that's been sitting overnight. So this is what it should look like. It's gotten bigger, it's risen, it's got a few little bubbles in it. So I'm just gonna mix it up one more time before I put it in the oven. So I just use a little flour just to kind of make it so that it doesn't get super sticky. Kind of cover my spoon in flour and scrape the sides down and just mix it up one more time. And you can do this with your hands if you want to, but I don't want to get my hands all sticky, so I'm just going to do it with a spoon. So that's about it. You just have to kind of mix it up again and then put the towel back on. And my towel's kind of dry now because it's been overnight, so I'll get it wet again. I'll put the towel back on and I'm going to wait for about 30 minutes and preheat my oven to 425 degrees, and then I will put it in. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes and I've let it rose a little bit more. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is the Melissa's dad that was making this was talking about mixing it up in like a heavy bowl. So this is the bowl I use for it. I don't know if it doesn't work very good in a plastic bowl or not. This is like a really thick bowl, stoneware. Anyway, okay, so I'm ready to put it in the oven. So what I'm going to do is I've got parchment paper that I'm going to get out, and then I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on here so that the bread doesn't stick to the paper. And then I'm basically going to dump this, get a little bit of flour here, in onto my parchment paper in the middle. And I have this, this is a Dutch oven, like a pan that I cast iron. I don't know if it's cast iron. Anyway, it's one of those really thick. It's a 3-quart baking dish. So basically, I'm going to pick this up and put it in here while it's still in the parchment paper. Not exact, it just goes in there. And then I'm going to fold the sides over and I'm going to put the lid on and I'm going to put it in the oven for 30 minutes. And then after 30 minutes, I'm going to take the lid off and let it bake for 15 more minutes with the lid off. Hello! So the 30 minutes is up and I'm just going to take the lid off, show you what it looks like. So I'm just going to take the top off. It's gotten big, but it's not brown yet. So just stick it back in for 15 more minutes and then it will be done. Okay, it's ready to go. I think I might have left it in a little bit longer, but it's still fine. So, normally sometimes the top is a little bit crispy. I was on my phone. I think I let it go a few minutes too long. But basically, it's beautiful. It comes out, you just take it out, and there you have it. You can leave it out to leave it crispy, or if you want to make the outside soft, which is what I do, I let it cool off for a little bit so it's not really roasting hot, and then I put it in like a gallon-sized Ziploc bag and leave it in there, and then it makes the crust soft. So anyway, it's delicious. So I hope you try it.